Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the first movie of Phase 5 of the MCU, has dropped in theaters, so it's time to talk spoilers. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your spoiler-filled thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is a spoiler review, so feel free to spoil away down below in the comments. No need for a spoiler warning, and if you haven't seen the movie yet, you have been warned. This will be packed with spoilers. Also, I got chapter markers down below. I'm sure this is going to be a very long video. You might not want to listen to everything I have to say, but you can skip ahead to the topic you're interested in to find out whichever subject is the thing you want to hear about. There it is, right down there. And let's get started. Kicking things off with my quick thoughts on the movies, especially in the context of the Rotten Tomatoes score. So I posted my spoiler-free review a couple days ago, and I went very mixed positive. There's a bunch of things that I enjoyed about it, in particular Kang, that it feels important to the MCU as a whole, that there's some world building going on here. That only made me laugh. And so I enjoyed those elements, but I felt the tone was all over the place. We'll get into all of this in the specifics and the details, but like when you have Kang played as this totally serious, dramatic villain side by side with MODOK, who is designed to be an overtly like in the comics, he's an overtly comic relief villain, very silly, very goofy. And then they find an even goofier version of him that ties into a character established in the franchise. They just don't go side by side. So I was like, I enjoyed it enough. I liked it enough. It resolved some issues I've been having with the MCU and kind of gave me some focus, some of that urgency for the stakes of what's kind of going on in this saga. I dug that enough, but barely enough. Like it's this. It is not, yeah, amazing. It kicked it off. It's incredible. No, it's like, we're kind of right there. And you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, and it's, last I checked, it was at 51%, and it's only been dropping. I wouldn't be surprised if it drops down a little bit lower. I don't think it'll go below Eternals to be the lowest rated Rotten Tomatoes score for any MCU film. I don't think it'll go that much lower, but it'll be really close. It's going to get very close to Eternals levels. And this is only the second MCU film with Eternals to be negative on Rotten Tomatoes. And does that really surprise me? Coming out of the film, I don't think it does. I think a lot of people are going to be watching the movie and be like, oh, Kang is so cool. And then MODOK shows up and it's Yellow Jacket and his face squished. And they can be like, what am I watching right now? Like, what? How are these two things do not go together? I think a lot of it starts to have a bit of that generic MCU vibe to it. It doesn't have a distinction to itself. There's just images that are just too silly. And I think people some of it's just maybe a bit of just MCU fatigue in general, but I think it's the repeated issues of humor undercutting the dramatic tension. There's eventually you get tired of it. You just see the same thing over and over again, and you just go, this isn't working for me anymore like it used to. And you just have like another one of these movies that's big spectacle and things like that. And okay, we've done this before. I think you have a little bit of that going on. And if you look at the positive reviews, they're this. And if you look at a lot of the negative reviews, they're this. It's just a lot of people being like, I liked some of it and a lot of it didn't work for me. And after I came out of the theater and I thought thinking about my audience, a lot of you are probably really going to enjoy it. It has some solid laughs. Some of you didn't like the first two Ant-Man movies, and so you like that this one has more stakes and weight to it, and it feels like it's a piece of the MCU that you have to see with urgency as opposed to the other two that were just kind of lighthearted. Some of you will like that about the film. But then I think about like my buddy Cody Leach, my buddy Rudy, and I think they'll watch it and be like, another MCU film that undercuts any dramatic tension with stupid jokes. And it won't allow anything to have weight to it. Even when it has this very weighty villain, it has to find a way to lighten everything and take away the weight of everything. And so that Rotten Tomatoes score, I look at it and I go, I'm not surprised by that. And I just feel there's some of the shine of the MCU's gone. some of it is that they're not learning from these mistakes. Like, they just have to learn to balance their tones better. They have to learn to not use the same bag of tricks. Spectacle, goofy humor. Like, you got to trust the story itself and the drama more, and the construction of plot, the character arcs and development. You have to trust that more so than a cheap laugh and Ant-Man got big and kicked a building. I like to laugh. I like to see big Ant-Man kick a building, but I've seen big Ant-Man kick a building and I've laughed at MCU jokes before. You have to find something fresh and new for me. And this doesn't have too much of that outside of like introducing us to Kang. So I'm still this. Maybe when I rewatch it, I'll go a little lower. Maybe I'll go a little higher. I'm not really sure. In particular, the Kang stuff did not work for me. I'm not sure. Normally, before I do these spoiler reviews, I like to see the movies 2 times so I can have my initial out of the theater reaction to it. And then I can go in a second time, process it with proper expectations, take more notes. I'm leaving town to go to Portland for Fan Expo Portland. I'm not able to go tonight to see the movie and shoot a review tomorrow. So I'm having to film this after only 1 viewing. I'm not quite sure how that'll change. Normally, my opinions form over time. Historically, Marvel movies have, or at least in phases 1 through 3, had really great out of the theater. Like, that was so exciting. And I feel some of that has fizzled. Where we've had so many projects in the past, and there's some things that are like just frustrations that I don't feel like they're changing, as I mentioned before. And I think that, once again, that's making people leave with some disappointment where they left with excitement before. I think that factors into that score as well. So diving into the movie, it kicks off with kind of a montage and voiceover of Scott Lang through his book, talking about his post-Endgame life and kind of showing him as kind of enjoying the celebrity of it all, being a somebody, not being kind of this ex-con exile, but now everywhere he goes, people are excited to see him, and there's people with Ant-Man jackets and things like that. So kind of enjoying the fame and riding that wave. Writes a book that's it's meant to be a little bit hokey, but a little bit like, oh, that's kind of nice that he's having success, and even Baskin Robbins is celebrating him. But all this is in the trailer. I was actually, I don't know if I should say surprised, but the movie very quickly goes from, look what he's been up to. And I liked seeing someone that it was a positive experience, because so much of Phase 4 was about the trauma of Endgame, which made sense. Like, that's, of course, that would be what would happen after a 5-year apocalypse. But also, for some people, things get better, and you kind of see that. He's a lighthearted, fun character, so having him have this positive experience, kind of nice. But it real quickly kind of gets to the point of where everything's going. So we're at a dinner where they're talking about, hey man, maybe you should be doing more to help people, and clearly all the people around him are rolling their eyes at him with how he's behaving. That he keeps talking about how he saved the world, and if you save the world, and that's kind of that, I would think that would define a lot of your conversations. That's kind of a big deal. If you, not even the world, you saved the universe. You ended the apocalypse. I think you get some bragging rights if you do that. But the people that knew him before he saved the universe kind of rolling their eyes at him and knowing that he's not doing more to help people, and kind of setting a bit of a theme for what's kind of going on here of, if you have power, you should use it to help others. I don't know if this is the story was the best context to do that with everything else it was trying to do, but they're establishing something. And to that point, they are kind of contrasting what Scott Lang has been up to with what Cassie has been up to. She is introduced as kind of being he's in the middle of like signing books and stuff, gets a phone call and has to bail his daughter out of prison or out of jail, and find out that she's in jail because she was at a peaceful protest about some homeless people that were displaced because of the blip, and she's trying to advocate for them. So she gets tear gassed during a peaceful protest and is in prison because of it. And it's kind of like, Dad, you're an Avenger. You need to do more to save the world. And I think this could have been an interesting arc for her character, an interesting dynamic for the two of them, if that's what the movie was really about. If it was set in our world about the post endgame experience for their family of you have someone who was kind of a nobody, kind of a good guy that ends up saving the world, and everyone knows who you are all of a sudden. And he's processing that, and he has a daughter that's growing up who he wasn't there for her because he was literally gone. And she grew up during the apocalypse, had to raise herself, and forms this kind of moral perspective of you need to help whoever you can. And he comes out and saves everyone without having to live through the apocalypse. He skipped over the apocalypse, comes back, saves the world. And so you have two people that have a hard time seeing where the other one is coming from because their experiences are so different of, I saved the world. Like what, like things are good. Our family's together. And she just sees more people that need to be helped. And come from this youthful kind of place of like, what do we need to do to help as many people? It doesn't come off like that though, because it doesn't, the movie isn't about that. It's just montages. He's writing books. She's arrested and the police are tear gassing people. Okay, the movie was probably written in 2020. I know what you're doing here, but you're not actually exploring complex issues of police brutality. You're just casually mentioning something like that and then having someone lecture the guy that ended the apocalypse. That's weird. Like, this is a guy that through what he did and the people that he interacted with, he was able to save half the universe and end the apocalypse. And very early in the movie, we have someone lecturing him about not doing enough. That plays really weird. And you kind of know what they're going for, but they don't lay enough groundwork. They don't actually explore it. There's no depth to what they're doing there about different perspectives or anything. So it just comes off like, you know, she cares and he doesn't. That's not really what's going on here. That's not a real accurate depiction of their characters, but that's the way that it's presented in the film. Where it keeps on going of, you know, hey, I need to protect and save you. And she's like, you have a responsibility to help people. That all throughout the movie, they're like showing up in all these different places. And there's these people being oppressed by Kang. And she's, we need to help these people. And he's like, I need to save you and get you out of here. We don't know these people. We don't know. And repeats this idea that he is only concerned about her. She's concerned about helping everyone. And these are actual generational different perspectives that are interesting ideas to explore that aren't being explored here. They're just being presented as she's more right than him. And it's set up really to make these scenarios where he's proud of his daughter for what she's done. But they do it in such a weird way because the movie needs to spend all of its time on Kang. That's the important thing about this film is Kang, not Cassie, having a very different perspective on social obligation than her father who saved the universe. So it feels kind of empty. And right along those exact same lines of not doing the groundwork to set up Cassie, we establish her, she's arrested, we do a dinner scene, and then we're like, hey, by the way, Cassie was reading Hank's journals and built a quantum communicator or something. So somehow a teenager just reading a brilliant man's journals is able to build super advanced quantum technology in her basement. And Hank even says, like, she was able to build this in the basement. Once again, there's an interesting concept here if the movie's about this. If the movie is about Scott was always so close with his daughter, wanted to be so close with his daughter, and they had a special bond. They lost time because he was in prison. They lost time because he was in house arrest. They lost time because he was in the quantum realm for 5 years for her, but only 5 hours for him. They lost time because of all of this. Now she's 18 and she's formed into her own person. And you realize that she's actually, certainly on a scientific level, dramatically smarter than her biological father and is actually more in tune with the Pym family, who are actual world-class geniuses. And so there's this kind of divide in their family of he wants to connect with his daughter, but he's struggling because she's more like Hank, connects with Hank and Hope and Janet and everything they're doing. And so he's an outsider with his own daughter that he desperately wants to connect with because he's lost so much time with her. That's a fantastic idea. That's really interesting. That's not what that's not what this movie's about, because once again, we have to go into the quantum realm as quick as possible to spend time with Kang, do all this world building, in which case it just turns into teenage girl red journal that she found builds super advanced technology. Thing that it took Hank and Hope years to build this type of stuff with all of their resources and all their experience and everything, like years to build this stuff. She builds it in the basement as like a little project. Like, hey, if I'd had one of these, I could have like, sure, but how are you doing this? And all along the way, obviously, the MCU's always had very smart people. But like, if you establish Tony Stark, 40-year-old man that is brilliant scientist guy, and then does something in a cave, he's been an adult that with a top-tier education, 20 years experience in field, in a cave builds arc reactor. He's smarter than everyone else. That's not quite the same thing as teenage girl with no education, no experience, surviving the apocalypse, reads a journal, and suddenly knows how to build an arc reactor. Or not arc reactor, quantum communicator, whatever it is. I don't know. I just like felt like everything they did with Cassie was like, there's an interesting version of this if your movie is set in the real world. If your movie is about a threat and it's more in line with the previous two Ant-Man movies, and it is about that division between father and daughter because she's different and he missed time and he's desperately trying, like, that's fascinating. That's a great arc. But when you just set it up as she's just brilliant, she has a better moral obligation than him. What? How is she this smart? She can build this in a basement. And how does she like even have the tech to like whatever resources you need to do that? And yeah, I just thought it was like really needed more time. There's an interesting, great idea there that they skipped over. Right in this same ballpark of the film, our inciting incident takes place because Cassie builds this quantum communicator to the quantum realm in secret. But Hank knows about it, Hope knows about it, but Janet, who would have been important if she knew about it, she doesn't know about it, and Scott doesn't know about it, which is like, I have a couple questions about that just in general. But so they've built this deal, and as soon as they decide to like start using it, Janet decides to chime in on everything like, you gotta turn it off, don't do this, it's a terrible idea. And immediately as this scene was playing out, I was thinking, wait, we're doing the No Way Home inciting incident thing again, where we don't decide to talk about what's going on until we're doing it. We got the powerful thing and we're not going to talk about it till it's going down. And the only reason the movie takes place is because we didn't have a conversation before we started the spell or turned on the thing. That's a really specific, lazy thing to do with your setup for your movie. Like, well, everything could have been avoided if we had just talked for 30 seconds before starting the super powerful thing, super dangerous thing. That was all my brain could think about in the moment. And in particular, this one even kind of more so was frustrating because now I didn't rewatch the post-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp since watching Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, but they had the big building quantum tunnel thing, and then they build the portable one in a van that's so important in Endgame. Janet's right there. Janet's just right there. Like, she knows they're playing around with the quantum realm. She knows that they send Scott into the quantum realm with their van quantum tunnel. That's not like a subtle thing. That's not like little detail. A major plot point for Endgame. the second largest movie of all time. Briefly, the number one highest grossing movie of all time. A major plot point is that they were playing around with the quantum realm in a van, and Janet was right there. And the reason that Scott got stuck for 5 years, that we're able to have the plot of Endgame, is because Janet was right there watching it happen and then blipped away. And you get to this movie, and all of a sudden, she's like, don't mess with the quantum realm. Don't talk about the quantum realm. I can't say what happened in the quantum realm. Don't mess with the quantum realm. Don't communicate with the quantum realm. Don't do anything with the quantum realm. Maybe some of you, maybe there's some explanation I'm missing here. What would be different? It feels like there's just a big, gigantic gap there between her attitude before this movie and her attitude during this movie. Maybe I could be missing something important. But that feels like a gigantic gap. In the same vein of, Spider-Man Far From Home, the whole plot of the movie is that Tony Stark left his glasses to a dead teenage boy. Like, in the battle at the end, like during the battle of Endgame, did Tony Stark pause to rewrite his will? Like, oh crap, it worked. We brought everybody back. I want my grid of security around the Earth's glasses to go to Peter. I better get it to Peter real quick. I better change. Like, is that what was going on during the battle? Every time it cut away from Tony Stark partnering up with Pepper in their suits, when he's not battling Thanos, when he's not, making eyes with Doctor Strange, he was rewriting his will to make sure that the glasses got to Peter Parker. No, they just designed a movie around an incredibly stupid plot hole of they forgot Peter Parker was dead for 5 years. There's no way there's no possible reason, explanation as to why Tony Stark would leave these glasses to a high schooler in general, let alone one that had been dead for 5 years. Then you get to this movie. Am I missing something? But she was literally doodling around with the quantum realm with Scott Lang in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Excuse me, this is Quantumania. Ant-Man and the Wasp, first one. Second, first one, Ant-Man is the first movie. It's these titles. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, full title, they're doodling around with the quantum realm with her, sending Scott in. And then you get to this movie and she's like, don't touch that. Don't mess with it at all. Feels like there's a big gap there. So then we get to the quantum realm, and this is where people start talking about it being kind of like the Star Wars of the MCU. I called it the Flash Gordon of the MCU because it's more kind of a campier, goofier tone. But we get there, and the first two Ant-Man movies had these very lighthearted, whimsical vibe tone, intentionally small scale, intentionally very character-based. Let's just steal a piece of tech. Let's keep a briefcase safe. We got to get this person out of here. We got to keep this person alive. Like, very simple. So this one goes, like, swings hard the opposite direction. We're building out this whole other world and this backstory of Kang building an empire with stormtroopers and people leading a rebellion against him. The Star Wars comparisons make sense, but Star Wars was inspired by Flash Gordon, and George Lucas couldn't do Flash Gordon, in which case he did Star Wars instead. And then because Star Wars came out, finally someone decided to make a Flash Gordon movie, and they kind of gave it this campy tone. So I'm talking about that Flash Gordon, the fun one. Not that I've seen other Flash Gordons, a ton of other Flash Gordon stuff. But anyway, so you get all this kind of world building. That's kind of fun. That was some of the stuff where it started being like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I don't know that I want this in an Ant-Man movie because I wished I missed that real world personal vibe. Within this review, I've already kind of pitched to you what some really interesting arcs could have been in the real world based off things that are in this film. You do all that stuff with Cassie, I think you have something that continues on. It could be really, really neat. But when you just kind of abandon all of Scott's crew, Michael Pena, all that stuff, abandon them, abandon the heist stuff, and just throw us into the quantum realm, it's a weird third film in this trilogy because it's so different, and it keeps the goofy tone, but does like, we're leading a rebellion over the Conqueror who slaughters people. I don't like, once again, there's that disconnect between the tone and the actual plot of what's going on here. But I liked a lot of this, of just, it gave you something like, oh, we haven't seen this before, and what's going on here, and the implications of this. There's a lot in there that was interesting to me. And then you get weird, wacky creatures, and, most of this I'll talk about kind of in the final act, but I kind of dug all this stuff that we're exploring and building out. But of course, the big thing people are going to talk about with this movie, Kang, that this is our proper introduction to Kang the Conqueror. Of course, we got He Who Remains in the season finale of Loki. So we saw a variant of Kang there that was kind of a more balanced one that gave us this stable, sacred timeline. And then through the events of that show, the multiverse was created and we were told what would happen. And so now we're seeing that here. And if you haven't watched Loki, the season, the last episode, I mean, it's like 30 minutes of a different Kang variant elaborating on the 1-minute version of how Kang describes the other variants of himself and what they're doing, the battle for the multiverse, the battle for dominance in the timeline. There's more of that discussion in Loki if you haven't watched that show, that kind of fills in some gaps. They complement each other nicely because it's two different variants giving the same story, but from very different kind of perspectives on it. And what I loved about Kang is that he's written in a manner to where the writing isn't particularly sympathetic. I mean, you see him as this guy that kind of manipulates people, has a very harsh objective, is very comfortable killing people. But the portrayal, he's so sincere in what he's doing that he manages to have like sympathetic eyes. And he's always holding something back. There's always more. And there's all these things that he says that are deceptive, but all these other things that he's being sincere. And he says, like, you can kill me, but there's more coming and it's worse. And that's true. He's not lying. And so there's this sense in which he believes that even in his conquering, he's stopping worse Kangs from doing even worse conquering and genocide. And so much of that even just comes in the performance of being able to bring a certain, I don't even know what the word, like, not sadness, that's not the right word, but you could just feel the emotion in him as he's on this mission to defeat the other Kangs, whatever led to his exile, that they found him to be a threat. Well, they're not like the good Kangs either. So I thought there was just a lot in there with what they were doing with him. And it's just an intensity. Like when he was angry, you knew he was dangerous, and they allowed him to be dangerous and kill in a manner that in nowhere we like, yeah, I mean, of course he had to kill those people. We're like, no, he's just killing people. Wait, why is he doing this? And maybe he has his reasons, but we certainly don't fully understand what they are just yet. And so it just gave us this intense villain. You want a villain that poses a threat that is interesting when they're on screen, that kind of feels like they have layers to them, complexity of thought, and you get all of that with him. Just there's a gravitas when he's in the room that just you feel that. So yeah, this is kind of one of those things I've been waiting for since we lost Thanos. Like, all right, what's next? And it wasn't, there were a lot of people that said, well, phase 1 of the MCU didn't have Thanos and you're okay with that. I was like, right, well, phase 1 of the MCU was building the Avengers. As soon as the Avengers are formed, then it teases Thanos. Immediately teases Thanos. So it's like, we're building towards this, and now we're going to this. Problem with phase 4 for me was that there wasn't like the short-term goal. There wasn't the thing we're building towards. It was just kind of like, here's all these different things. Like, okay, it just feels like we're going in a lot of directions. I don't know how it ties together. I don't know where we're headed. Feels like these are a lot of different places, and I don't at all see how a bunch of these tie together. A few of them, yeah, but a bunch of them, I have no idea how these tie together. I have no idea if this will ever be followed up on. I don't know what this is going on right over here. And so then when you even just put this character in there, it kind of gives you that target, that thing that we're working towards, that threat, that looming danger of like, oh, now it's coming. Now I see what's kind of go. Okay, that's not going to be good. I felt that's something I needed in a game. But on things I was less thrilled about, MODOK. In particular, MODOK side by side with Kang was just baffling choice. So when they first mentioned MODOK, and I guess it was Bill Murray kind of gave the acronym, and he said it, and I started counting, listening to the letters. I was like, there it is right there. There's the acronym. That's going to be MODOK. And he shows up, and obviously he's a silly character. As soon as the helmet comes off, and he shows up in arms, lays danger, yikes, helmet comes off. And it's Darren, Yellow Jacket, from the first Ant-Man, his face squished into the classic Kang look. That did not work for me. Were there plenty of things in here that made me laugh? Sure. Like, you've always been like a brother to me. And then you see Scott Lang like, what? We barely knew each other. And I'm like, at least I get to die an Avenger. Those are funny lines. We'll get to those later. But it was just so goofy, so distracting. Every time you're looking at this face mashed into this helmet, like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but it definitely doesn't look right. And the whole movie, you'd have Kang play this serious scene. And then MODOK says something stupid. Kang murders a bunch of people. And then MODOK goes, I'm not going to die a dick. Darren doesn't have to be a dick. At least I died an Avenger. Like, immediately cuts the tension with something so silly, so goofy. And that looks like I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's so bizarre what they went with. MODOK made me laugh. He did not work at all for me. So then the plot starts to kind of come together, and Scott Lang and Cassie get taken captive, and the audience is being given information from Janet, who has been hiding information all along. And had she shared this information sooner, I think this is part of the problem where the plot was really frustrating, because all of it depends on the fact that Janet just won't say anything. Just, you got to trust me. You got to do this. And doesn't tell anyone anything until it's too late. Because if she told them sooner, then all these things wouldn't happen. If she was just shared information, the plot wouldn't take place, because everyone would know, oh, don't mess with this. Oh, this might happen. Oh, this. That doesn't happen. So the way it plays out, she gives the exposition dump, and then it's like cutting to Scott, who it's like, hey, I need you to go get this thing. You have Pym particles. I need you to go get this thing that you can bring back to me. And obviously Janet used Pym particles to make it inaccessible to him. And she did that to protect multiverses from being destroyed, galaxies from being destroyed, universe from being destroyed. And he doesn't know this information that the audience has. So he's sent on this heist mission to save his daughter. And it feels like the whole movie, like the trailers are teasing, I need you to do this thing for me. I can give you back time. I can do this for you if you get this thing for me. And then when you watch the movie, the heist deal, it's just like one sequence. And it feels like they were trying to balance holding back the secret of what's going on with Kang to line up right with when they're doing this mission. And the way that it plays out, that it feels like this whole heist for Scott needed to be a bigger, grander adventure, because it literally plays out. It's like we're deep into the movie. He goes on the heist, and then we're in the third act. Whereas it feels like that should have been, I don't know, more fleshed out. But all that said, the sequence is kind of fun because they go into this wacky thing that starts messing with your mind of repeating things. And I like the sequence. It reminded me of the Mysterio sequence, where there's just all these different Scott Langs and some fun humor in there as well. So I don't mind all humor, but the real base level corny stuff I'm not crazy about. But so he goes in there, goes on it. I like the sequence. It was a fun little sequence, clever, inventive, a little bit different. And at the same time, like Hope is flying in to try and get to him in time to tell him not to hand it over to Kang. And so he gets it. She saves him or whatever. They crash on the ground. And like one of those moments where you pause to like, I don't know even know why they paused. But instead of being like, you can't give that to Kang. If you give that to Kang, it'll power his ship. And don't give it to him. They're just going to kill every multiverses. You pause to have a little conversation just long enough for Kang to show up, grab it. And of course, he doesn't kill them in the moment, because if he killed them, then, you know, then we wouldn't have our third act. So he lets them live and like, you left me here, so I'll leave you here. Let's see if you can survive. Of course, right? Because, you know, we'll do the Bond villain thing. I won't just kill you. I'll come up with an elaborate plan for you to die that gives you time to escape. Kang does that. And so then it takes off, powers up his stuff, and then we move into our big, epic battle to stop him and his evil technology from happening. So back at Kang's fortress, Cassie is able to use Pym-Tech to escape, and because she has a suit that her dad didn't know that she had. And this is another one of those zones of like, once again, they because the movie's not really about Cassie, they don't have time to develop her, give her an actual arc, train her, explain any of these things. So it's just like these offhand comments of like, you have a suit? Yeah, I have a suit. So she just has a suit. And they have her fail to throw one punch, and her dad gives her some tips, and then she figures out how to do it right. But she's not really trained. So she just happened, like she's socially conscious person with a better moral obligation than her dad. She's a world-class scientist because she read a journal, and she knows how to do the suit, despite the fact that her dad didn't even know she had a suit, and he gives her like one pointer. She's like, I know how to do it. She's good with the suit. I don't have any desire to use common phrases that have been overused to describe characters. This character and her abilities have not been earned. There's no journey to get there. It's just she's competent in a superhero suit. She's a world-class scientist, and her moral center is awfully good. And even this doesn't even, I think the movie, once again, sets up an interesting exploration of knowing what to do with moral obligation to help others, and does nothing with it. They have a situation running parallel, almost parallel scenes of Cassie telling Ant-Man, you're an Avenger. You need to help these people that are being oppressed. You need to help them. And he's like, we don't know these people. And she's like, we have an obligation to help them. So that's set up. And then almost just minutes later, you have Janet deeply troubled that she chose to help Kang without knowing who he was. And because she helped him, he now potentially could threaten trillions of lives. There's a very interesting discussion there of when do you help? And we all should help people, but how do you know who you should help? And parallel, you have one character, we need to help these people we don't know because they're oppressed. And over here, we need to help this person that has been crash landed, but that's bad and dangerous. It's right there. Two different scenarios where people don't know the people they're helping. One of them is like, of course you should help these people. Other one, of course you shouldn't have helped this person. They're dangerous. Both situations, you don't know the person well enough. As the audience, we know Kang's going to be the bad guy. We know that they're going to be the good guys because we've seen movies before and how we know how this works. The characters themselves don't know that. Don't know what we know. They don't know they're in a movie. And the movie itself doesn't take those two contrasting examples and have anything to say about it or anything to explore with it. It just puts it out there. And it just creates a set of scenarios where Cassie is on the right side of things, knows how to use her suit, runs a rebellion, frees rebellion people, gives a speech that allows her dad to be like, I'm so proud of you. Which is, you know, it's like nice to like have a dad's proud of his daughter because the movie's not about it. So she doesn't really have an arc, a journey to where she accomplishes things. It just sets her up to be really good at everything. There's a phrase that people have used over the last 10 years to describe female characters like that. I don't like to use lazy terms that are overused. It fits. It fits the term. I don't want to go down that path. I'm not looking to be that guy, but there was an interesting journey they could have given the character with interesting dynamics with her dad and Hank and all these things they could have done. But the movie itself isn't enough about her to be able to do that. So they just shortcut her to being good at a bunch of things. So then we get our big slam bang finale. A lot of fun stuff in here. I mean, big fun spectacle things of Ant-Man, gigantic kicking buildings. And then the rebellion takes place. They pay off the holes joke. I did like the holes joke of, I've got holes. And then there's some fun in there. Yeah, I like what they kind of, some of the fun stuff they did with Hank's aunts, where they early on, they're building this society in this, and you know that's going to somehow play into it. So they establish, like, you're early in the movie, everything, little line of dialogue is tied to something else later on. And then when they get sucked into the device thing, you see the ants get sucked in. So you're like, when's that going to tie back in? What's going to happen with that? And so then you come back and Hank shows up and he show all throughout the movie, he's got something going. He has his ear deal in. Like, why does he have his ear deal in if he's not in a world where his aunts are there? Because his aunts are there. So he shows up with his aunts with their whole plan. And so I don't know what they were doing with like that. There's a lot of criticisms of Disney and the way they've been handling certain things, like just weird lines of dialogue thrown in randomly about socialism is good from ants teach us this, like really odd stuff. And they just throw it in there without, once again, exploration of ideas. It's just stating it. It was a weird thing to do. But then you have them show up in the finale. That was a fun way to do a Calvary. That's what when you have a big battle, you always have the moment where it feels like we're going to lose. Feels like the bad guy's going to win. Kang's showing up, murdering people. And then the cavalry swoops in and it's a bunch of ants in an Ant-Man movie. That's a fun way to do it. So, and then you got to get the last moment for MODOK in here where he has that moment where Cassie's like, you don't have to be a dick. And he's like, how do I do that? And so he decides dies to not being a dick. Did I laugh? Sure. The little, you've been a brother to me. Now I'm an Avenger. Is funny. But they do this at the time in the movie where you just have Kang mowing people down, murdering them. Dozens of people shown being killed. And then we cut to like a goofy joke. There's dead bodies everywhere. Like literally people are dying left and right. They're fighting for their lives, for their world. And we're doing jokes about, you've always been a brother to me. That's frustrating. Just tonally, just won't stick to a tone. And then we get the fight between Scott and Kang that the trailers made seem super serious, dire consequence. Everyone escapes except Scott, who's going to make it so Kang can't get out. And you have the big fight and portal shuts down. He didn't make it in time, but he kills Kang. I don't need to win. I just need to stop you. We just both need to lose. And that happened. I really thought, and Hope is part of the reason why that stops that she comes through. I really thought they're going to stick to like a dramatic ending where they're stuck in the quantum realm. And even some videos, I did a video on will Scott Lang die? And I was like, no, but he'll probably get stuck in the quantum realm again, which would be repetitious, kind of lazy to repeat something so specific as being stuck in the quantum realm. But then they didn't do that. He still gets out. They open the portal back up and he gets out. Kang version dies. And I thought maybe he was getting sucked in. Well, it will come back now that he died. And this dramatic, like, Scott face bleeding, like, oh no, are they really going to do? Nope, no real dire consequences here. Everybody survived. I thought that they were going to kill off Hank Pym. Someone's going to die. Nope, no dire consequences. Everybody was able to escape. And we have a happy ending. And I don't know, even the rules of the quantum realm are getting real fuzzy at this point in time. Like, how does this mess with time? Like, why did Scott Lang he was in there for 5 minutes, but it's 5 years, but Janet was in there for 30 years. Like, what? what are the rules here? So then we get our epilogue and life back to normal once again. Happy ending. I wish we'd gotten more time in the real world in this movie. I wish there'd been more stakes or consequences for our main cast here. And you have Scott walking around happy that he has these little moments where he's like, wait a minute, Kang said something worse is coming. And it keeps hinting at that, and it never fully goes down that path. Never does anything with that, really. But I just thought that was kind of fun that they did that. They're kind of teasing where things could be headed. But I don't know. That was kind of the thing that was frustrating of it didn't want to stick to get it going too dark, unfortunately. And so it just teases that looming threat of other Kangs. That leads to our post-credit scenes where you get two of them, both Kang teases. One of them a generic one where you see like a council of Kangs, and they're the ones that exiled him. It wasn't humans that defeated him and exiled him. It was Kangs that exiled him. It's kind of interesting. Like this backstory, what's going on with this Kangs and their dynamic with one another that this guy got exiled like that. The scene looked really corny when you have like Pharaoh head Kang. And so it looked weird and didn't look great. That's from the comics, that there's all these different Kangs that look like that. So it's comic accurate. It's one of those deals that like MODOK, yeah, there's a lot of things comic accurate about what they did there. Still didn't look great. And then Kang with the Pharaoh headpiece, comic accurate, straight out of the comics, looks pretty ridiculous. But as a tease, like if you remove how it looked, this idea of there's a bunch of them out there and they've got a plan and they really are coming after the multiverse. It's pretty terrifying. Nice tease. And then we get the one at the very end that I'm sure is a scene from Loki, that they've done this before with their scenes where they just take a scene from something coming out soon. And so you get that Loki will be dealing with this other Kang from, I don't know, what it's 100 years in the past or whatever. It's fascinating. So it's just a little tease of our Loki characters going after one of these variants. So it's kind of nice. I actually have to go. I have a video chat with one of my supporters over on Patreon in 0 minutes. It just changed the time. I need to get over to that. I was talking fast at the end because ran out of time on this. But let me know what you guys thought down below. I did like the movie. I probably had a lot more negative vibes in here because it was the things that I enjoyed were things to talk about real quick. Kang was great. The world building, it was important. But there's a lot of things that I feel like there was a better movie or two movies here. Like I didn't mind this Quantum Realm Rebellion film, but I just also would have liked a more traditional Ant-Man film with Cassie. Like all that, like I was whining about Cassie a lot because all of the things they did with her have an interesting version. The movie version in the movie is not interesting. The variant in the movie is not interesting because it just cuts through the journey and it gets to the end point of she has a strong moral compass. She's good in the suit. She's a scientist. She leads rebellions. We didn't earn that. And I would have loved to have spent time exploring those family dynamics, which this series has always been so good with. That's what they've been fun about these movies is they are about family units. And I would have loved to have seen more of that. So anyway, let me know what you thought down below and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.